There was a horror film triple bill on at the cinema, and I thought I'd take some Datura to make things interesting. I had read something on Datura a while back saying how the user hallucinates and that these hallucinations seem real. I thought that if I took some, then some 3D hallucinations would complement the film and make for a great experience. So it was that I chewed up a handful of the seeds before going in to watch the film's scary movie. Anyway, I was disappointed. All that happened was that the damn seeds sent me to sleep about halfway through the film. I woke up towards the end and felt that I had wasted my time. However, when I went to get up, my balance went and I staggered down the steps of the cinema, wondering what the hell was going on. Feeling disoriented, I struggled to gain my balance and thought that maybe some food would do me good, so I headed towards a Burger King. I had trouble walking straight, and I remember one person saying as I passed, "He looks like he's on drugs," and that person's companion saying, "Yes, you can always tell." This did not fill me with confidence as I headed into the burger bar. I decided to order a large extra value meal and sat down with my tray of food. I did not feel hungry, but felt that I should eat to give my body the ability to cope with the effects of the seeds. My first mouthful was a real effort. My saliva had almost dried up. I managed one more mouthful, but on the third mouthful the food just lodged in my throat, and it took a huge mouthful of Coke to shift it. I noticed now that an old woman and her grandson who were sitting opposite had stopped eating and were now just watching me. I happened to look down at this point and saw that my hands were bright red. At this point the thought came to me that something weird and powerful was happening to me, and I should get the hell home as quick as possible. I quickly left and staggered through the crowded streets to the station for my train home. I remember thanking my lucky stars that the train was on the platform and due to depart in a couple of minutes. I sat down on the train and breathed a sigh of relief. The train departed. Unfortunately, sleep was overtaking me. En route to my stop, I drifted in and out of sleep. What was worse was that on waking I found myself muttering gibberish to myself. I quickly shut myself up. I saw that a couple of people on the crowded train looking at me, unresolved to stay awake, only to fall asleep again. One time I woke and the train was just pulling into my stop, and thanking my lucky stars again, I ran for the doors. Well, I made it the short walk back home. However, home was a nearly deserted old nurse's home, and not the most welcoming of places. As I walked up the corridor to the lift, I saw a man walking his dog. Then the man and dog walked into a wall and disappeared. This was one particular moment that I will remember till the day I die, but I didn't want to hang around. I just wanted to get to bed and sleep off the effect of the seeds. I did not make it to bed. Outside my room a group of beings greeted me. I quickly realised that although they looked similar to us, they were not human. One male had a round head and an absolutely huge smile that suggested a mouth containing about 100 teeth. Another male had a face that smoothly merged into his neck with no chin whatsoever. A female had some type of microchip eyes. These characters greeted me telepathically. They then escorted me up the corridor and pointed out a hieroglyphic drawn in some exposed plaster on the wall, and said that they had done that themselves. Around this time I remember looking at the hallway carpet as I stretched up the hall thinking, wow, what a huge long dress that lady was wearing. Everything gets kind of hazy from now on. Several details are clear however. Soon after I entered my room, two different beings presented themselves who communicated telepathically with each other. Some telepathic thoughts entered my head on occasions, the details of which I cannot unfortunately remember. I remember feeling extremely inferior and loudly stated that it was an unfair situation because I was having to rely on speech. I did telepathically communicate hello to one of them at one point. I got a look from both of them as if I had been making a rude gesture towards them, before more telepathic communication was sent to me a few seconds later. I remember feeling also that I should allow some hospitality to my guests, and went to the kitchen to fill a kettle to make some tea for them. I returned to my room, made 2 mugs of tea, and asked the being who was sat in my armchair if he would like a mug. This being just sat there and looked at me. I put the tea down and said that if he wanted it, then he should help himself to it. Shortly after, or maybe before, I was walking in the corridor when I saw more beings lurking in a dark, unlit section of corridor. I felt extremely uneasy about this and went to call on a friend who lived on the floor below. But just as I was approaching his door, I noticed more of these beings, and I turned back. I hammered on the door of another friend. She answered and asked, "What is it?" My mind then went blank, and I paused before blurting how the cleaner had emptied my cupboard of food. I don't remember her response, but she swiftly closed her door, leaving me in a state of panic. I decided to phone security. I said how there were a couple of intruders on the premises. The security man put me through to the police. I said that there were a couple of dodgy characters in the building who were near me now. However, just as I was saying this, I began to feel some warmth to the beings, and began regretting my call. The policeman asked if they had made any direct threat to me, to which I replied that, well, no, they hadn't exactly. I then said that they probably had much more serious things to deal with and apologised. The policeman said a patrol car would come round anyway. I put the phone down and winced. I really didn't want the police to interfere and possibly endanger my new friends, as I had suddenly come to regard them. After a few minutes I made my way to the front lounge where the TV was on. I had now realised it was very late, in the middle of the night. There were 2 more beings in the lounge watching TV. I peeked through the curtains and saw to my relief a patrol car pulling away. I turned back to the room and saw that the beings had stopped watching TV and were looking at me. I was now feeling thirsty and drank from the tap in the kitchenette bit at the edge of the lounge. I tried to engage these beings in conversation, but they ignored me and just watched TV. I sat down and joined them. They communicated with each other, but ignored me. Occasionally, one or the other would vanish. I would turn to find one of them gone and seconds later reappear. By now, nothing was surprising me. Meanwhile, the last programme of the night had finished, and there was just a text information service on the TV screen, as is normal for 4:30 in the morning. I joked to one of the beings whether he was a fan of the Night Scream information programme. No response. I went back to my bedroom. The 2 beings who had been there originally were still there. They were now vanishing and reappearing. As time went on, they began to vanish for longer and longer periods, and I knew that they would leave for good soon. After a while, there was only one left, and he looked a bit sickly or tired. I felt a bit helpless that there was nothing I could do to help, and eventually, he had disappeared for good. Feeling myself left on my own finally, my thought was unsure of what exactly reality was. I did feel privileged to have had such an experience, and lucky that I had made it home. The friend whose door I hammered on told me later on that it had been 3:30 when I had knocked, 12 hours after swallowing the seeds. If there had been people around while I had been prowling the corridors, then who knows what might have happened. I also think that there may have been a lucid dream element somewhere. I have now started doing exercises to facilitate lucid dreams, and on one occasion, as I was falling asleep, my mind was throwing up hypnagogic images, and up popped one of the beings, one of the types with no chin. Well, I shot awake in bed with a start, and it took me a while to settle again. However, I suppose that if I manage to regularly repeat this, then it will be less of a surprise and I may engage consciously with this being sometime. I would definitely recommend Datura to those broad-minded enough to cope with the otherworldly happenings. Was I flirting with schizophrenia? Or was I engaging with extraterrestrial beings? Whatever. It certainly opened my mind, and I will be definitely taking it again once more, once I have got to grips with lucid dreaming. This is the intuition telling me what to do now.